I'll be tying a purple Chubby Chernobyl today. This is a really effective fly during the Salmonfly and Golden Stone hatch. Purple is an interesting color and it really seems to bring fish up. Here's another image of a normal Chubby Chernobyl that I tie in a golden stone color. But today we'll be tying this version in purple. I'll put a hook in the vise. I've already crimped the barb. I'm using a Daiichi 1260 size 8 hook. For thread, Danville 6/0 in a black color. Start behind the eye of the hook and make some turns down just a little bit past the hook point and then back up to the 50% mark. The reason I did that is when I add the tail right now, it will bind, the thread will help bind it and keep it on top. I'll be using Crystal Flash in purple. And here's a little tip, just cut the corner of your Crystal Flash off and you can pull out these individual fibers and not have a big mess. So I have 6 pulled out there. I'll trim that close to the package. I'll tie it with a pinch wrap and fold this back, and that will create a tail that's twice as thick as the original 6 barbs, or 6 fibers. And I want it about half the length of the body. Another tip to manage these, just put them back in a bobbin holder and they'll be ready for you. Be using some purple ice stub. Pull a little bit out. Moisten my fingers and I will dub one direction. I go clockwise. And starting right where I tied in the wing, come up to the hook point. I want to make just a little bit of a ball, and that will be the tie-in point for my foam. The back is just 2mm foam, and I've just cut sections here. Just take an X-Acto knife and make slices. These are about 1/4 inch thick. They're about the same thickness as the gape of the hook. I'm going to create a little bit of a rounded edge here. So I'll take my scissors and just kind of cut and move it. Just rotate it slightly and you can just squeeze the back of it or the tip. And I want it not quite as long as the tail. Hold it with my thumbnail and make a securing wrap. Make 5 or 6 wraps to make sure it's not going to go anywhere. I bring my hand underneath and have a little bit of an open spiral. And this will be a thicker tie-in point for the wing, which is some poly yarn. I'll see if I can find a link to an Amazon's, but this is Fentex slipper and craft yarn. And a skein of this will tie a whole bunch of flies, but it's relatively inexpensive. and I'll just clip off some. And I found a nice little brush. Hairline distributes these. I'll put a link down as well, but you notice how quick that will open up the fibers. I will tie it in some secure wraps and then fold it back over and push down with my thumb. That will distribute it around the hook a little bit. Make a wrap. So I made 4 or 5 wraps. I'll come in front of it, bind down, secure my thread so it's not going to slip off, and do that again. And we'll trim some of this. I'll pull out a little more dubbing. Just going to put some around the base of the wing here and where the thread wraps are. Cover those up. And that adds a little bit of security. I found that when I tie the legs in, having something to bind to will help. So I'm using some round rubber legs. And it comes in just a wide, I've already used most of this. So it comes in strips like that, and I've just separated them. Just use your scissor tip and you can pull them apart. You can also use flex floss for that, for these legs. It'll work just as well. So I put the rubber around the thread, even up the tips, and I can place those legs wherever I want them. Make a wrap and pull. And I'll put in the leg on my side this time. Even up the ends. Use the thread to place it exactly where I want it. Another thread wrap and pull. You notice I don't use a lot of extra thread wraps with that particular technique. What I have done before is just put let me show you how I do the other technique, and then I'll pull it off. But in the past, I've just had my 2 legs go underneath the thread and let them sit on top. And then you can make one more wrap to make sure they're not going to go anywhere, and pull these to any desired location. That's another way to do it. We'll pull that out. And now we'll dub the rest of the body. The trick with ice dub is that you want to use a little bit at a time. I'll pull some of these fibers out and wrap it around the thread. It will slide up and down on your thread, so sometimes it's a good idea just to make a few wraps. So I've covered my thread wraps. Make sure with that. Continue to tighten it. Pull the legs and the foam up, and I will just start to make the body. Use a little moisture. Squeeze. Pull things out of the way again. A little bit more. Notice how long these fibers are. I want somewhat of an even body. Just a little bit more. I want to cover a little bit longer body. And I also am trying to keep the end of the hook towards the eye empty so that I can bind the foam down around the hook. So I'm at least 2 eye lengths behind the eye of the hook. I'll pull that forward just a little bit. You can see how that stretches somewhat. And use my thumbnail to keep it in place. Make a soft wrap and then pull. And I will come underneath again. I want to create just a little bit of a wide spot to put in the second wing. Make sure that I have enough room to cut or to tie off the fly with my thread behind the eye of the hook. I'll cut another section of the poly and comb it out. Place it on top, the soft wrap. And then push that back. Actually, that's not going to be long enough. So you notice when I pull this or push it all back, all those wings, I need it to be a little bit longer. And now I will push it back and go flatten it a tiny bit and tie it in and come in front, and then that will lock it. Put in just a little bit of a base for where I'll tie in the legs. So it doesn't take much. It's just I found that having a little bit of material there will make sure the legs don't slip around. So I'll pull out 2 segments here. And split it individually. Put the rubber legs around the thread, and I will even those ends up, grab a hold of it, and I want those to be kind of in the middle of that segment, and pull. I will set those very tight. And do the same on my side. Make sure the rubber legs are out of the way. And finish with a tiny bit of ice dub to cover all of those thread wraps. And rubber legs are tough. You've got to kind of manage them at the same time as you're winding the material. I want these to be about the same, right along the edge of the foam. And I'll trim a little bit of that eye stub. And now position my thread just behind the eye of the hook. And I'll put a little bit of Zap-A-Gap on the thread. And I'll just put a little dab there. Doesn't take much. And use a 5-turn whip finish. Grab the foam and the legs and make a 5-turn whip finish, and that should lock it in place. Trim a little bit of the longer fibers off and come underneath, grab and pull out, but I don't want to stretch it too much, it'll pop back, so I'm creating a head. And you can see how far in front of the eye of the hook. And the last step is to come in and just trim the edge of that foam off to create just a little bit more of a rounded head. I don't know if that makes a difference or not, but I like to do that. The last step then is to trim the wings, and I'll use this comb to open all of that poly up. And I'm just I'll take my scissors and create kind of a rounded, so I like to do it out of the vise. So I'll take this, trim a little more of the back one. And let's see what that looks like. This fly will float like a cork now. And I'll tell you, you can keep trimming this until there's no wing left. It's easy to do. I think I'll keep it right there. The one thing I did want to mention, these legs are about 2 inches long, so when you put them in, they're maybe 1 inch on either side. You can make them longer or shorter, however you desire. So if you like this video, please give me a thumbs up and consider subscribing to my RiverKeeper Fly YouTube channel. I will have the fly pattern sheet linked in the description below.